I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the November 18th, 2025 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. Councillor Duquesne will offer the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Ikaroxam Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their homes here today. We honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on, tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of the Ashland watershed include the original, past, present, and future indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Tequilma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Wakaka, where the Crow lights, that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
Thank you. Councillor Sherrill will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Bloom.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Duquesne.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Thank you. We have two mayor's announcements this evening. The first is that at our mid-December study session, we are going to receive the annual work plan updates and the new work plans for our citizen advisory committees. And so coming into the new year is when the new work plan year will start. So this is a great time to put applications forward to serve on those committees. And our website has a list of committees that has indicates the vacancies. So anyone who is interested in serving on an advisory committee in the new year, please check out the website and see if any of the ones that have vacancies are of interest to you. The second is just information about how to sign up to talk to the council this evening. So if you would like to address the council, you'll find the speaker request forms on the back wall. Please fill them out and put them in the tray up front here near our city recorder. Please make sure that you fill out clearly what you are coming to speak to us about. If it's an agenda item, please indicate the agenda item. If you've come to speak to us today on something that is about something that is not on the agenda, you will do that during public forum. Please make sure that you submit your speaker request form prior to the beginning of the agenda item that you wish to speak on. That will allow us to get you up at the correct time. We now move to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? The floor is open for a motion regarding the minutes. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of November 3rd, November 4th, 2025, and July 19th, 2022, and August 2nd, 2022.
Is there a second? Second. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you. Our consent agenda has one item. Does any councillor wish to remove that item from the consent agenda? The floor is open for a motion regarding the consent agenda. Councillor Dale?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson.
Yes.
Duquesne. Kaplan.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
We are now to special presentations. Our finance update, Sabrina.
Tonight, our interim finance director will give our financial update for the financial statements for the period ending in September 30th of 2025. So this means we are about 25% through our fiscal year. And with that, I will hand it over to Bryn. Thank you, Bryn.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Bryn Morrison, Interim Finance Director. The packet of information that you all have has summary statements regarding the first quarter of the fiscal year 26, which is through September 30th. It has a summary of fund balances, a summary of revenues and expenditures citywide, a statement of resources, requirements, and changes by fund, by each fund, within the funds by each fund, and a summary of cash and investments. This is a chart showing year over year the first quarter revenue, so the first 3 months, July, August, and September of each fiscal year in the comparison. Revenues are tracking as anticipated, and 20.4 million or 4.7 was the increase from the prior year. And what is most attributable to that is the increase in the category that is called taxes. However, it's the increase to the public safety support fee, the wildfire reduction fee, and the creation of the parks fee. The food and beverage tax and the transient lodging tax, that quarter is not due until October 31st. So July, August, and September revenue will not be due to the city until the end of October. Therefore, it's not on this report. It'll be on the next report. We are still undertaking the audits on the food and beverage tax, as I mentioned before, and providers are being compliant with that. So far, we have not seen much change in the revenues that were shown at the end of fiscal year 25. The largest amount of our property taxes are collected in November as well, so you'll see that on the next quarterly report. And license and permit activity is lower than the previous year at this point, as we mentioned before, and we are monitoring it. And building permit activity, as well as system development charges, are not typically comparable quarter to quarter, as there's fluctuations in the year. Intergovernmental revenue has increased, and that is attributable to some grant revenue that came in for parks, the opioid settlement, and a BPA conservation reimbursement that we received. Charges for services increased 5% as expected, and that is due to the rate increases as well as the increases in the miscellaneous fees and charges. Interest on investments has decreased compared to the prior year, but however remains higher than historical figures, and we do closely monitor that. This is a year-over-year chart comparing expenditures for the first 3 months of the quarter. And our expenditures are tracking as we had anticipated as well. As Sabrina mentioned, the first quarter is 25% of the biennium, the first year of the biennium. Personal services is at 22.3% of the budget. Materials and services is at 26.7%. And the largest change is the decrease in the debt service as the AFN loan was paid off last fiscal year. We will be keeping an eye on department budgets throughout the year, as we typically do, in their compliance with our appropriation levels and according to our adopted budget. The city's net position citywide, we are at 80.4 million versus 82.7 from the previous year. And the general fund balance was at 10.1 million versus 14.6, which is in accordance with how we adopted the budget going into this biennium by using the ending fund balance. The electric fund is 7.7 million versus 9.2 million for the prior year, And that is due to the utility account processing that we have discussed before. One concern we have right now, which we'll be bringing to council in December, is that the capital improvement fund has a negative ending fund balance right now, as you'll see in your packet. And what that is due to is to cost overruns from the community center and Pioneer Hall. We did not start this biennium with as high of a beginning balance as we had expected. So therefore, we are estimating at this time, we are going to need a transfer from the general fund of $200,000. And we will bring that to you in December, waiting on the final expenditures to come in November. Cash and investments citywide, we are very close, within 1%, 75.2 million versus 75.8 million. And this balance is critical for our financial health and our ability to meet our ongoing operating needs and obligations. An update on our low-income energy assistance program. This program changed this fiscal year. So this is a new program for us where there is no age restriction any longer. We have 384 qualified customers that are receiving the discount right now, which is 30% off of their water, electric, and wastewater charges. If they have water and wastewater, some accounts only have electric. We have 3 accounts that have reached the $400 threshold, which is the amount that they can reach within the year. And to this point, as of the end of September, we are about $29,000 of our $283,000 that we have reduced those qualified individuals. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Dale.
Just one, thank you, Mayor. This one that I thought of, Bryn, thank you for this, by the way, and is relative to that capital improvements fund negative balance. Is our only option by policy to transfer from the general fund, or are there other fund options the council could decide to transfer from?
That's the option that we're recommending.
Sure.
Because it is not appropriate to transfer, for example, from the water fund to pay for that, but we cannot transfer from an appropriate ending fund balance unless it's an emergency. So we truly do have to transfer from the contingency.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess we do have one more question. Councillor Kaplan.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Sorry not to be on time with my question. Bryn, I know that in a couple of weeks, 2 sessions from now, you're going to be presenting the audited financial statements. Just if you could give us an update on the status of the audit that's undergoing right now?
Sure. We are actually still in the midst of it. The final product is with our auditors at the moment, hoping to have it back from them from their final review on Tuesday. And then we will be putting the final parts of the book back all the way together on Wednesday to be sent out. And we don't have any concerns at this point. They have not brought up anything that we should be concerned with at this point.
Great.
Thank you.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a quick question for you, Bryn. So you mentioned that November we should have our taxes and our F&B, right? And that should be discussed when we're together December 1st. We can kind of look at what that is coming in dollars and cents, correct?
Yes, I can provide an update.
And so I had a thing. I was looking at, I believe, not necessarily the last time you were in front of us, but I think it was the last time you were in front of us. You mentioned our ending fund balance. Looking at the ending fund balance and the status of that, it seems, I can't quote verbatim, but things were balanced due to taking from our ending fund balances in previous times. Is that correct?
Correct. So as part of building a budget, we do have to maintain a policy level. And in order to maintain that policy level, we did need to use ending fund balance that had carried over from previous years.
So tell me about our ending fund balances generally. Do you feel that they're the status of them, that they're good? Because we had mentioned taking from the contingency to pay for the CIP. So can you tell me how you feel the status of our ending fund balances look right now?
We're overall citywide, we are in compliance with our policies. That's the first page of the packet. But it is definitely something we do need to look into, especially for the general fund moving forward. The capital improvements fund does not have contingency large enough, to cover that $200,000, and that's why we require the transfer.
Thank you, Bren.
You're welcome.
I thank you for your honesty.
Sure.
And just as a reminder, the next quarterly update that we receive will be in a joint conversation with Parks, correct, after the new year? I know we started that process, but we just barely had the last one, so we're in kind of a strange gap moment. But anyone who's watching from home and saw those earlier announcements, we're still on that process, and the next time they see that joint process will be at the beginning of next year after we close out the second quarter of this biennial budget, correct?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We are now to public forum. We have two people who have signed up to speak with us today at public forum. The way that you will do that is you'll come up to this podium here. If you need us to bring a microphone to you, we're happy to also do that. You'll have 3 minutes. At the clock here will track that time, but so will the visual box that's up there. It gives you a green light when you have plenty of time. It moves to yellow when you have 20 seconds left. At that point, you'll hear the first buzzer, and when your time is done, it will move to red, and you'll hear a second buzzer. At that point, please finish the sentence you're on, and move, and so that will allow us to hear from the next person in line. So we will start with Paul Mosina, and then Debbie Nicewander.
Hello, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Paul Mozina. I live in Ashland. In the process of passing the 2025-2027 biennial budget, the Council violated the Oregon Revised Statute and the Ashland Charter. On July 2nd, the City Attorney sent me an email attempting to justify the Council's actions, which you had him read into the record at your September 16th business meeting. Today, I am again submitting my response to his email. In that email, he stated, per budget law, after the Budget Committee has approved the budget and a public hearing is held, the Council can make changes to the budget that was approved when adopting the budget. The City Attorney literally confesses that the Council violated the Oregon Budget Statute. The Council amended the budget resolution at the study session on May 19th and discussed those changes again at the business meeting on June 3rd before the public hearing was held. And the Oregon Budget Manual explains, if any changes are necessary after the Budget Committee approves the budget, the governing body may make the revisions after the budget hearing and before adopting the budget. After the budget hearing, before adopting the budget. How does this council make changes to a resolution? By making a motion and taking a vote. This was not done for the amendments to the 2025-2027 biennial budget resolution unless the council violated sections 6 and 9 under chapter 8 of the Ashland Charter, which says, no action by the council shall have legal effect unless the motion for the action and the vote thereon take place at proceedings open to the public. It also says, except as the charter otherwise provides, the concurrence of the majority of the members of the council present at the council meeting shall be necessary to decide any question before the council. So let me repeat this for anyone who thinks this is information and misinformation. This is not misinformation. This is the facts of what happened. You amended the 2025-2027 budget at a study session. You decided not to take a vote. And then before the public, you did this before the public hearing, and then on June 3rd, before the public hearing, you reviewed the revisions, the amendments that you had made before the public hearing, which violates the Oregon revised statute, as the city attorney pointed out in his email response to me. So I just want to say that you need to stick to your principles, which you swore an oath to uphold the charter and the Oregon statute and constitution, and you're not doing it. And none of you have gotten back to me with any defense of what you did with that budget vote, the lack of the budget vote, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie Nicewander?
Whoa. Hello. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, my name is Debbie Nicewander, and so I kind of want to set the record straight a little bit. I had a conversation with some police officers this afternoon, and they were a little offended, thinking that I was accusing them of entrapment. And so, setting the record straight, I know they have a job to do, and I know that you all direct them with your policies and your ordinances and your rules. And so my intention was not directed at the police department. I feel like we have a pretty good working relationship. They have a job to do, I have a job to do, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. Also in that conversation today,
Oh, that's not. You're fine. Keep going.
you had me going there.
Little
Okay.
misfire.
Yeah, right? So in our conversation today, they also stated that they're going to be expanding the night lawn expulsion zone. And that is now going to include the parking lot and the Grove. And they wanted me to pass the word around, and I'm not going to do that. I feel that's the department, legal maybe, their job to properly notice that and update the rules so we're all on the same page with that. So moving forward, I hope you can do that. Also, you know, I have utmost respect for municipal court, what our judge is doing, what Carmel's doing, yada, yada. I would recommend, we do need an additional municipal court clerk. We only have 2 clerks, and they're overworked. And we could probably use, like the chief said last night, we lost our data analyst. And losing our data analyst, we no longer have blotter reports. And that kind of is scary to me. There's no public record now of actual police activity. And so I hope that can be resolved some way, because I live for those blotter reports. So anyway, have a good night.
Thank you. We are now to our public hearings time, and we are at first reading of Ordinance 3255, an ordinance relating to liquor license review, repealing and replacing AMC Chapter 6.32. Sabrina?
All right, so the city has done a comprehensive review of our liquor license code in an effort to streamline the process for our businesses. I'm going to hand it over to the city recorder to walk you through that. Thank you, Alyssa.
So I don't have much to add other than what was in the packet, but highlights of the proposed changes include the updated purpose and scope, clarifying the differences between temporary and annual permits, clear outline of the review and approval process, state specifically what a business needs to do to get a favorable recommendation, and authorizes the city manager to sign annual applications. This is a result of the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission changing their process, and the fact that the city of Ashland's internal process changed years ago and the code was never updated. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate it. I know we exchanged a couple comments and emails on this, and I know you do a phenomenal job working with our local business owners on this. Is there anything that you could just speak in, we'll just say, business owner terms, language, not code speak, that they would need to know that would help them with anything, or anything that would be a change that might catch them off guard that we could articulate to them?
There shouldn't be any change from the business owner standpoint, except a faster turnaround.
I'm sure they appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Kaplan.
I move to approve the first reading of Ordinance 3255, an ordinance relating to...
Oh, pardon me. We have a public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up? Or I officially opened the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us this evening?
No.
I closed the public hearing, and now the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Kaplan.
I move to approve the first reading of Ordinance 3255, an ordinance relating to liquor license review, repealing and replacing AMC Chapter 6.32.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Councillor Kaplan?
Appreciate the work of our city staff to make this more efficient. I know that there's been, in the past, there were some concerns about some delays that had taken effect. I think we've done a pretty good job. Haven't heard any more complaints in the last year or so, year or two maybe, year and a half. And but I appreciate that this will make it even more expeditious. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson?
Yes, thank you, Alyssa. I think there's businesses out there that have been hung up that will appreciate this. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Motion pass.
Thank you. We are now to new business. The proposal for winter and extreme weather shelter at 2200 Ashland Street. Sabrina?
All right, so good news. We are finishing up with our construction at that facility. So we are looking to have an open date in time for some severe weather. But we have been working with Aura to look for a way to provide overnight sheltering through the winter. They have let us know that they have some state funding that they can apply towards this effort, which is a really great thing for us. And they are looking to utilize our building for both an every night winter shelter as well as running a severe weather shelter. So they would have a nightly shelter and then expand capacity during times when we would call for a severe weather shelter. So at the temperature threshold set by the resolution passed by council. And so before you tonight, you have a proposal for what that looks like. And we are grateful for Aura for looking to partner with us, as well as looking to utilize those state funds in that manner.
And so just as a clarification, this is coming in front of council this evening, not because the contract threshold is above what you are authorized to sign, but because we have a policy question of this being a transitional use, and council has directed staff to bring transitional use decisions back to council, correct?
Council has directed me to bring back any activity happening in that building back to council for approval.
Right. So what we're not looking to do this evening is to approve a contract. We're here to give you policy direction regarding this proposal.
Correct. So I think, council should also note my priority has been finding a partnership for the severe weather shelter, but obviously there's more capacity within that building. So once we have this sorted, we'll be looking to have a process for looking at other service providers who may be interested in providing services in that facility as well, and what that looks like in terms of the city kind of operating as a landlord, providing opportunity there. So you will see additional things coming forward in the future for fully using the building.
So in the interest of teeing this up, then what we could expect is that whatever comes of tonight's conversation over those next several months, that's when we would start to have those discussions with potential service providers that might use the office space. But we're not anticipating any of those partnerships coming to fruition during the next several months, while potentially there would be a winter shelter there. Is that
I think
correct?
we'll work on that process during those months, and we would definitely work with Aura if we have someone interested in starting sooner than later in that building. I don't think they'd be opposed to that, but we want to be mindful that council's priority has been to have the severe weather shelter. And I'm done.
Okay, something is happening tonight. Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. Just to kind of follow up on that, so obviously we're not approving a contract tonight. We're just basically giving staff direction to go ahead and begin drafting a contract to enter into an agreement.
Yeah, that you're approving us using the building in this manner.
Right, and then so I guess the timeline-wise, you'll be coming back to us to approve a contract.
No, because it's within my dollar threshold.
Because it's the $30,000.
Yeah.
So then follow up there, because it is only $30,000, which is nice. So we do have plenty of money left over for when this shelter ends. That's kind of the consistent every night kind of deal. I'm thinking into summer, smoke.
Yes, I think
We have enough to cover
an
additional
important note is last year it cost us about $130,000, and
Right.
so this year we're only contributing $30,000, so we'll have additional funds for other needs, which is good because
Right.
the campground is continuing to increase in cost with
Sure.
the facilities that we have out there. So I think it's a really great way to kind of retain some of our homeless funding. And I think always the question is smoke, because that's really,
Of course.
we have no idea we can go off kind of historics for heat and cold and be close, but smoke is really, last summer we had none.
Yeah.
Summer before
But we
had
do
weeks.
have funding available
Yeah.
for extreme weather moving forward.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there that we're not blowing it all on this.
No, I think the hard thing though, with providing something that's set by thresholds is finding a partner who can operate last minute. Because the council has been very clear that they want to provide a good experience for those using the service, and we want to be able to connect people to resources and have it professionally done, because we want to be aware of the neighborhood and the concerns of where it's located, and so making sure that who we're partnering with is able to run it effectively and efficiently and be respectful of that.
And then when you sign that contract, that'll be uploaded to Laserfish, I'm guessing, or something, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And just a quick announcement for councilors. The executive director of ORA is here to answer any questions if we have questions of ORA. Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Sabrina. I appreciate that. And so I completely understand under the contract threshold. Would you say, and I pulled up the contract that we had with Road Retreat last year, would you say that it would, outside of, dates and dollar amounts, that it's going to be pretty much the exact, I don't want to hold you to exact, but that the expectation prior to seeing this contract would be very much in line with the same scope that we had last year?
That's the legal template that we used for
Sure.
all of our contracts, so I'd
Okay.
assume it will be very
So
similar.
for the expectations on both sides of, like you said, residents, but also Aura that's what they're using and is an understanding. Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. Thanks for that additional information. The emphasis on developing a partnership and the time frame that you're thinking about in terms of using that building for other providers as well. And I wanted to follow up on Councilor Bloom's question about funding. I recall that in the budget discussions, we originally allocated $200,000 for homeless services for 2 years. We ended up shifting $100,000 of that to another use, early childhood programs, and also that we agreed that I think the third quarter fiscal year, which would be the winter, I guess, or as we come out of the winter, that we would have a review of the availability of funding for homeless services in case we needed to top up that money. It sounds like our projections are going to come in a little bit below what we thought, because we were thinking it was going to cost about $100,000, and because ORA is able to bring a significant portion of the cost that we're going to be, we'll have more money going into the smoke season and season. Is that true?
Yeah, I think you could probably still expect a potential contingency draw for homeless services because our budget is so small, depending on, what other money is available besides the money we've budgeted. So this is, pretty amazing that Aura has come to the table with funds to be able to use. That takes that kind of strain off of the city. And so, we'll see where we're going, but we won't need as significant of a draw if we have to do that at all.
Thanks. And it sounds good that we're having a good, strong partnership with Aura, both there and in the night lawn, because I know that they've been providing some assistance here.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think, I'd just like to thank Dan and his team at Aura. It's not often that you ask for someone to run something for you, and they're like, yeah, and we have money. So thank you.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Sabrina, I just wanted to be clear because we were talking money. So I believe you said $130,000 and then we'll give $30,000 with working with Aura and we have $100,000 left. Am I
No,
correct?
so Aura's has 100,000 to use for
Yes.
the winter shelter, and we're contributing 30,000 for that. So our total estimated cost for it is 130, which is similar to what it cost in total for us last time.
And that is for December 1 to April 1. And then we do have money set aside for increment weather, smoke, heat, as we go throughout the year, correct?
Yeah, so I can go back and see how much we have because we pay bills every month for the infrastructure for the nylon. And so if council's interested in that number right now, I can get it for you. I would say this will help us not need to tap into contingency so early, but I would expect, because we have another winter to get through, pending other funding availability, that we may need to tap into contingency for funds later on, but that's not an issue right now.
That was my second question, other funding opportunities, availability. What does that look like? Do we have any more opioid funds that we could put towards the 2,200? What would that look like, other funds?
So I'm talking more specifically about like state grant money. The opioid funding is for infrastructure, and so we'd have to review the exhibit.
And we can't use infrastructure on the nightline? Opioid money? No,
Not unless we're
because we're not
doing
building anything.
opioid, or excuse me, infrastructure
The
projects.
Okay. So if I can really quick,
Yes.
thanks, Mayor. And so I just wanted to be very clear that having this from December 1 to April 1, we do have money for increment weather for the remainder of this year. And we will have to look into additional funding, doing it again next year. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. I was hoping it might, we may not need a motion. I want to just ask you if it would be interested in something or for consideration is, one, just kind of administratively, would you mind adding the contract to maybe just to your city manager report? I don't know, for the next one, just so that it's just on the record and we have to go digging for it. That's number one. Selfishly, that's a reminder to myself too. But more importantly, I know that last year we had a pretty bad winter and we came up on March 31st and it was tough, because we were closing the doors the next day. So I'm wondering if this council, if it would be something that we'd be interested in, and if we can take a look at the look ahead and say maybe a mid-February check-in, we can check in with Dan and his team and where we are and say, how are we looking? How is it doing? What are we looking at? I just don't want to get flat-footed with April 1st coming along and we don't have a plan in place. So if that would be something you'd be interested to potentially pencil pen in for around there, if we can slot it in so we can at least have like an update report and we can kind of talk about next steps.
So not knowing Dan's schedule.
I completely
can
understand. I'm
probably-
speaking for him right now, of course,
Okay.
and he's given me a head nod there.
Yeah,
so-
no, I think we can give you an update after it's functional for a couple of months. so
Absolutely. I
February.
just don't want to all of a sudden we turn around and go, we've got 14 days and we
Yeah.
don't know what we're doing.
And I think similar to last year, I think the service providers do a good job of having a transition plan and making sure kind of that they're recognizing that date and that amenity is going to no longer be available, and work with the people that they're serving to find alternatives.
Sure, and this gives us a chance to articulate that to the broader community too.
Yeah.
And so forth. Yeah, thank you.
A question that has been asked in relation to all of this is just where will we be looking for, how will we be filling the slots? I know there's a strong interest in making sure that the folks who are on our night lawn, who are known in our community, who are residents of Ashland, are the first ones in line to get those beds. How does that work?
Yeah, so I think probably Dan or one of his team is best to answer their process.
And you can come up to this main space if you'd like. Or if you don't like, you stay over there. And please just hit the button so it'll turn it on red. Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to see everybody again. So our goal is, I think in terms of capacity. And so the last time I was here, we talked about the night lawn and trying to find ways of supporting them better with our volunteers, but also getting them into Aura services. So the thought process here is we are still doing that. We have outreach staff working to coordinate the volunteers, and we're getting successfully 1 to 3 people into the Aura shelter monthly. And so with our idea with the winter shelter is to come in and prioritize the people on the night lawn. And then as we're finishing up the season, keeping rooms open as people are leaving the Aura shelter and prioritizing people coming out of 2200.
Great. Councilor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
So I think about some people don't want to be in a shelter. Some people want to remain in their tent. So my question is not necessarily for you, Dan, it's for you, city managers, that the night lawn is still open for people who want to be there?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And so, Councilor Henson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dan. I'm curious, what does it look like when the 30 or 32 beds fill up and the overflow starts happening? We have 20, roughly capacity for 20 people, right? What does that look like, and how do we plan for the capacity at overflow?
Yeah, so the way we planned it is to have dedicated beds, so we're getting people there and they know that they have a bed secured every night, so that nobody's showing up hoping they get a bed, right? So then they can have more time planning. And we're also going to be developing, I've been working with some of the volunteers and SOFA to do an assessment of what churches are supporting the extreme weather shelters. There are a lot of churches in the community that do that already. And so making sure that we have everyone in line with what capacities are there at each church. And so I think the idea is the more organized we are, the more people that are unhoused and couch surfing can put a plan in place because we have better organization and information.
Great, thank you. This is amazing.
Thanks.
So a follow-up question to that, is yours a follow-up to Eric's? Okay, so let me jump in here real quick. So tell us how that works. We have 32 of the beds filled, and then we also have the need for severe weather shelter where it's a walk-up shelter. That takes up the additional 20 spaces or so, and then are you saying that then that's the overflow capacity would be with the churches as a secondary element? So we fill up this shelter first, and then we move to our partners in the community. Is that correct?
And we're starting that right now. We're reaching out to the churches and some of the community organizers that are here to develop sort of a list with capacity in the community so that we know way in advance. And then we're also hoping to recruit more churches so that when we are doing an emergency shelter, which is now we're open 24 hours because it's freezing, that when folks are just coming in, we have space for them, dedicated beds according to the layout. And as we're starting to reach that capacity, we're starting to communicate with the churches and see where they're at, and hopefully just be better organized in that way.
And if I could just, from experience last year with the every night winter shelter, I don't think that Rogue Retreat reached capacity because we had a lot of people already at the winter shelter. And so I think hopefully with the design of the building and allowing for additional slots with the overflow, we'll be able to meet that need. But I do appreciate the partnership that's going on.
Great. Councillor Sherrill?
Yeah, thanks, Dan, and your staff for stepping up to look into this. Can I just ask where the funding is coming from on your side? Is that coming down from the state level?
Of course. So we're a project turnkey site, which is, during COVID, a lot of money came in to purchase motels and convert them into the shelters. And so we were the first funded project turnkey site in Oregon. And it positioned us to be part of all the state's initiatives for the unhoused. And so, as we all know, the budget took a hit in homeless services this year. So they passed the budget that deeply reduced our prevention money, but at the last minute, they suddenly found a pot of money and asked us, look, this is one-time money because we may be reducing money next year. We want you to use it for outreach and to increase capacity in some way. And so we have extra money that we were allowed to choose what percentage went into operations for the shelter, outreach, or direct services, which would be prevention. So what we did is we asked permission to be able to put more into operations. And so the operations allows us to hire staff to support a winter shelter. And we took it out of outreach because we're pretty good with outreach money. So it is state money. We don't expect it to be here next year. We hope something good happens next year, but we may not have this goodie bag next year, just so you know.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Mayor. One more question, Dan. We talk about pooling resources as a regional, in our partnerships. We can expect, I assume, people needing our services too from other communities when we're not at capacity and they are. This is so new, I don't even know if we have a model that what does it look like, but what does it look like potentially with other communities in the Rogue Valley needing our beds? Have you thought that through at all? What does that look like?
Well, like Rogue Retreat, for example, has a lot of beds in Medford, a lot more than, and Medford does have a lot more services than Ashland. And so I feel like, I think what you're asking, do we have extra capacity and are we drawing people that might need it in the winter shelter?
What is our capacity to help out our neighboring communities? Have we had these conversations, or is it not a two-way flow? Or are we at the end of the valley and we don't count or something? I don't know, like logistically.
It's so case by case. It fluxes. So, for instance, our outreach staff that are here working to try and house or get night-long folks in shelters. When we don't have room, we're calling Rogue Retreat. We're calling Access. So there's this, cross capacity that we all rely on, and that's part of sort of our continuum of care discussions. So I would say we find the capacity through our relationships wherever it opens up. We don't really have that much capacity in Ashland. We have our 50 beds. There's the Nightland. Most of the folks are on the Nightland. There's some transitional, but probably half of them to 3/4 are pretty consistent. And then and the 50 beds at Aura. So I think capacity-wise, there's more people in need than we have capacity in general.
Thanks.
Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. Dan, one quick question I have is that at our previous ad hoc committee, one of the things that they wanted to see and this council adopted was in the office areas. And I know that this is just the beginning, and I hope it truly is just the beginning. Looking at the office areas, and the people who will occupy those office areas, looking at something that Councilor Hansen kind of touched on, our regional partners. Are we going to look at that together? Do we have input? Because the other ad hoc, they mentioned like for mental health care, for addiction, for things like that. I know Rogue Retreat has, our addiction recovery has a good thing going on to help someone who's dealing with addiction, and then NAMI with mental health care and things like that. Are you going to be reaching out to our regional partners to see what that would look like in that space?
So that would be something that the city will have to work with Aura on moving forward. So I think tonight our focus is just on the winter shelter, and we'll come back with a plan for the rest of the building.
Okay, but I just had to put that out there.
And so I think all I'm looking for tonight is a motion that we're okay with what we're doing.
Thank you, Dan.
With this building, and we're going to move forward with entering an agreement with Aura.
So just also as a clarification, the way we should understand this question in front of us is, for this winter, there is a convergence of the fact that we are in a transition space with the newly remodeled building, and there's funding available. One of the questions that I've been getting is this basically putting a permanent process in place? And at this point, we would say, no, this is for this particular year, and we see where we are next year with what has been brought into the building, what the uses are, what resources are available. This is, in my mind, one of the transitional uses that the first ad hoc committee identified as that there would be potential ways of using this on its way to whatever its permanent space is. So for now, it seems that we should understand this as there's a convergence of resources and need, and is that correct in terms of this policy question?
Yes, this has an end date. This is for
This is
winter
for this
shelter.
winter.
This is for this winter. This is one-time money. Or is not committing to anything else. So this is what I'm asking for, that council's okay with this, and that I'm good to move forward.
Great. Councilor Bloom,
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion if there's no testimony.
there is testimony. So we have people who have signed up to speak this evening. Each person will have 3 minutes. The way that you will speak to us if you were not here for the earlier introduction is you'll come up to this podium, you'll have 3 minutes. The light signal on the side will give you a green light while you still have time. At 20 seconds, you'll hear the first beep, we think. And then at the end of those 20 seconds, you'll hear the second beep, at which point your light will turn red. And we ask that you complete your sentence. The people who have signed up to speak this evening are Echo Fields, Denise Gerke, Rich Rohde, Jeannie Martin, and Christopher Nadeau. Please tell us your name and the city in which you reside at the beginning of your testimony, and that will start your 3 minutes. So we'll start with Echo Fields, and then go to Denise Gerke.
Hello. Hi, Dan. First of all, I'm incredibly grateful to ORA for stepping up to strengthen our ability to serve our homeless folks. I live in Ashland, by the way, on Glen Street. I forgot to say that. One very practical thing that my experience in the last 5 years dealing with these issues. I would like to see some very specific guidance, Sabrina, in our contracts for these services specifically, that ask whoever our partners happen to be for a really solid evaluation study or report would be a better word, an evaluation report at the end of each session. Part of what's in our 2022-23 ordinance is about activating winter shelter, is sort of a requirement for an after-action report. And that language, as far as I can recall, is not included in the contracts that we've done with either Rogue Retreat or with ORA in the past. And I would like to see that language included in the contract, that there will be a fairly substantive, robust after-action report. We got a little bit last year, but it never quite seemed sufficient to me. And I have some ideas about what should be in that report. I've had a conversation with Dan already a little bit around some of this, so I don't want to get too much in the weeds. It's also very clear from the conversation tonight that the context, the larger environment around homeless services, both full year and emergency winter, that the context is very complex. And so looking at very narrow trees without looking at the entire forest keeps coming up in the questions that you've all been asking tonight. And so we need to have, I think the council definitely needs to have a more holistic understanding of how all the pieces of homeless services come together with ORA, the police department, Rogue Retreat, the continuum of care, the people who are providing meals in various places, including what the churches are doing. So in other words, really probably at least an annual report to council so that you all do have that bigger picture available to you. And I think that's probably enough for me to say. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name's Denise Gerke, and I've been experiencing homelessness now for going on 2 years, and I've been denied shelter consistently from Portland all the way down to Ashland. The main reason I came here was I found myself on the night lawn in the last couple of weeks, and I met an elderly woman in a wheelchair, and I got to know her. I'm going to keep her name private. I was a radiology technician for 20 years. I was also a Zillow Premier agent in Southern Oregon for about 5 years, and I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but I did. It's getting worse, and I think there is a real lack of understanding of the different levels of homelessness within not just the city of Ashland, but throughout the whole nation. My main issue and why I came here today was because I put on my, healthcare hat, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I found her lying in the bushes at Garfield Park for several days, decided to gather some things and take her into the bathroom and clean her up, where I discovered she had maggots coming out of her. When I removed her diaper, the skin came off, and she had severe sepsis. This is beyond politics and money. This is beyond any one of us in this room could end up in this situation. Her story, as I got to know her, she was a survivor of domestic violence, like myself. She was injured at a job, and they dropped her off at the hospital and left. She was estranged from her family due to domestic violence, and she's been homeless for years. These aren't cracks. These are massive gaps that are not being addressed, and I think it would be amazing if the city of Ashland could take the lead in showing the rest of the nation what fixing a homeless problem and a humanitarian problem looks like. Everyone at the night lawn has gathered together for each other, and I think that there's kind of a idea that homeless people are separate from other people, and they're not. They're real people with real issues. And so I just wanted to come in and tell that story today. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich Rohde, followed by Jeannie Martin. No, sir. Followed by Christopher Nadeau. Rich Rohde?
Yes, Mayor and Council, Rich Rohde, 124 Ohio. I just wanted to come, when I saw this on the agenda and read the contract that you're looking at tonight, it just hits my heart in such an important way that I just have to be down here to advocate for ORA and you all to connect and make this happen. But I just wanted to add kind of like 3 decades of context of the history of where we've been. I used to sleep on the floor in our church back decades ago with homeless families. And when we were trying to find emergency weather space, the key thing was to try to find a space. Could we find one? And people scattered around and try to do that. Now we have a spot that it's working well and will really help the families and really rationalize the way that we provide this. I also wanted to say the value of Ashland as a model. When we changed the emergency weather program in Ashland, we went from an absurd 20 degrees, to call it, to 32 degrees. We came up with a much better program of calling those things. And one of the things that was just happening recently is that Medford was back at 25 degrees. And they used to say, why doesn't Ashland go back to 25? What I just heard tonight was that Medford's emergency program has gone up to 32. It's a place where we can be a model in our region and our state for providing quality emergency weather and services. The last thing I want to say is I want to thank every person on this council who kept alive the building at 2200. When it was controversial, when it was difficult, when people said we should get rid of it, there was a whole lot of things. And what we're seeing now, because people's persistence, that we're seeing that we're able to make that an incredibly useful and important part of the services that we provide. So thank you all.
Thank you. Jeannie Martin.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Martin. I'm a resident of Ashland. I live at the ORA. I also lived at the Night Lawn. I'm a single woman. I am on the Facebook post that got the update on the woman from the Night Lawn that was found. Janai is one of our amazing volunteers and had to report the trauma that she endured just trying to walk up on this situation, because the homeless life is so drastically different and presumed acceptable by the housed community, and it's not. I was sex trafficked to Portland. I was a raging alcoholic, and I did meth at the time because you couldn't shut off the men that were coming at us. And report after report of being victimized on the Night Lawn, or just by the bullies in town who are amped up on whippets and alcohol. And I would like to see something done about maybe a female lawn, a women's night lawn, a ladies' lawn, maybe at the 2200 building, and maybe some sort of opiate money to women's rehab so that they don't get lured away by, I call it troll fishing, because they called me collateral damage or low-hanging fruit. I couldn't even report it to the police officers. They wouldn't give me the time of day. In my defense, I've only been clean and sober for 1.5 years, and they have found me with my panties off at one time. I have a radio show about it on KSKQ 89.5. Dan will be explaining all of this tomorrow, and I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Christopher Nadeau.
Mayor, I've asked for there to be a Q&A here previously. I guess I have to come every time. I have 3 different topics onto the same topic. Can I be extended an additional 2 minutes if so moved by the rest of the City Council?
It's the public testimony is 3 minutes per issue. So if you have one If you're here to speak on this agenda item, you get 3 minutes. But let's go ahead and restart it to accommodate the question.
Okay, so I'll do the first one. I'm just going to wing it. Performance-based budgeting, look at it. Carnegie Foundation, I'll put you in touch with them.
So, sir, if you have a comment about this particular issue of the shelter, that's what you would want to speak to now? That's the appropriate thing to speak to now?
Yes, Mayor. Okay, so let me slow down, because the problem is the 3 minutes. I mean, it should be 5, but that's fine. I'll do all 3 topics within 3 minutes to the best of my ability. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's nice to be alive. I've had a couple of attempts on my life here, and I'd like to thank the police for quite a number of, especially this officer here. First off, ORA is a great charity with dedicated staff. They have a gap in leadership. I don't know if it's a new executive director. I've never met the gentleman. I've worked with the staff. I could talk about the problems, but I'm happy to put them in touch with Dr. Jamie Heisman in Florida. He's PhD psychologist. He's also Social Worker of the Year award. I've worked with him for years. He'll provide pre-training on what care coordination is, and not to cut off services right when someone's going to get their teeth fixed, not give them tokens, things like that. You know, great charity, great work, gap of leadership. Performance-based budgeting, if you cut services at the state level or federal funding, okay, how can you expect a charity to continue to do the same amount of work? It's called performance-based budgeting. I can put you in touch with one of my mentors at the Carnegie Foundation. He's also a professor at Baruch College School of Public Affairs. The third thing is elder abuse. It is rampant out here. What you don't know about the backstory of this woman is that I was the one who called 911 after I called the local police twice and had to have a coffee shop 911 because I thought she had hypothermia. The cop said, I don't know, whatever. Well, we got her to the lawn. She didn't want to be on the lawn. And what I got from advocates, and I'm not going to talk bad about Debbie or anybody else, was she's refused housing twice. Just leave her alone. Well, we didn't. Chris and I didn't. We took her over to the park in 30-mile-an-hour winds. We put tarps over her. We kept her warm and hydrated. And this woman, who has a medical background too, okay, said, we've got to wash her. I said, yeah, she's got to be horizontal. You can't be vertical sitting in a chair for 2 days, even if she's warm and dry. And that's where she found the worms. So what I'm saying is that this is the same case as Grants Pass. This is the Supreme Court situation. And my testimony started on February 5th of 2025. And it was good news. It was this police department's doing great work. They shut down a horrible shelter that was rampant with drug addiction and recovering addicts, dealing drugs out of it, pretending to be soldiers of love and light, and they weren't. And they were also helping a path of housing, a path of recovery. Violence against women under this police chief is up 37%. Does anybody think that's a problem? I do. I do. And we need to talk about it every day, because I can tell you about a lot of these people out here, ex-convicts, are helping to avoid violence against women. Yes, I'm a victim of domestic abuse in England, not physical, verbal, okay? I lost all self-esteem, and I've been an advocate for seniors my whole adult career, okay? And this city council, and I love this woman here. Take a look at older Americans Act monies.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Age-friendly America.
Thank you for your time and your testimony. Okay, we have received all of the testimony on this agenda item. Are there any further questions of staff or our guest from ORA? Floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to direct staff to enter into an agreement with ORA for the provision of winter/extreme weather shelter at 2200 Ashland Street.
Is there a second? Councillor Kaplan has seconded. Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate some of the email exchanges and some of the cool things that you guys are going to be doing and improvements, I would say, over the last year's operations. I obviously, as I expressed to you, frustration, it's not on you or ORA that the contract wasn't included. Really, for me, that's just about oversight, being able to understand what the details are. So when people ask me, I have that information. So I do look forward to that contract being finalized to look at it. But why I wanted to make the motion, even though I had that hesitation, which typically I would not make a motion or vote for it, I hope you understand as a testament to your leadership. And I can't say a couple of years ago that I would have said yes to this. So thank you for what you've brought to ORA and to our community. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Councillor Kaplan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thanks, Sabrina, and thanks, Dan, for developing this. I think this is the way forward. This is the best use of this building at this particular point in time. I think I appreciate you bringing forward this opportunity to use the building, in this way for this time. And thanks to ORA for all of the work that you're doing with the Night Lawn and with 2200, and then with, of course, the ORA Center. Community Resource Center and shelter there. I think looking at things across programs, across opportunities is the right way to go forward. There's obviously much more that needs to be done, and I look forward to finding ways that we in the city and our community partners at ORA and elsewhere can really bring more resources to bear. So thank you very much for stepping forward to do this, and I look forward to the after action report as Echo says. Thanks.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to thank Ora and Dan for all of your work on this and putting this together, and thank you so much for your willingness to work and speak and take your time to discuss opportunities and what that would look like. Looking at this, as you know, I was kind of in between a rock and a hard place. I have, since my days on the Housing and Human Services Commission, back when we were a commission, I always looked forward to one day having a weather shelter. And here we are. And for that, I am grateful. However, when I think about the work that our ad hoc committee put forward and their vision and the consensus that everybody came together in a 6 months time, and they took their time away from their family and their life to sit down for hours for 6 months to find a consensus to work together, and everybody agreed on. That was important. And I feel as if when I think about the people in our community, I want them to know that their time has not been lost or wasted. Earlier, the mayor was mentioning now's the time to get committees together and advisory committees, and we have surveys and we have things out there, and so many times the community is not willing to get on board because they feel like they're not heard. And I don't want people to feel this way. I just see that here we are again. And I think it's because many times in situations we put the cart in front of the horse. Where we are right now, 2200, it's winter, it's cold. December 1st, I believe, that's the date to open the doors. And I don't think we can open the doors any sooner than that. I mean, I look forward to people being warm and people being inside. That's number one priority. The process of all of this could have been done better. I do support this. I'm glad that we have 2200. It's kind of been precarious since we got that building. But now having it used in a way that people can really shelter, be warm, I trust that Ora will do the right thing. And I do look forward to something that was mentioned earlier, keeping a pulse on it, having that conversation, holding each other accountable so that we take care of our community well. So I will support this, and I just want and there will be a next time when committees are put together, I want them to be heard, and I want them to be at the table 100%. But thank you for what you've done.
Thank you.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dan. I was just listening to you, and I just want to express my appreciation and of all the things, but one thing in particular that I really appreciated was the willingness and actually going out and engaging with the larger community and working with churches and other institutions and entities. You know, we talk a lot about the fact that I think it's at least it's somewhere in the 20 to 40% range of property and tax lots in this community is tax-free. or is not. And so there's a shared. We're all community stakeholders, and I think sometimes we get wrapped into it's only the city's responsibility, or it's only Aura's, or it's only someone else's. And I really appreciate the fact that your efforts are truly engaging and actually doing it instead of just talking about it. That's number one. Number two is, and something I've just struggled with, to honestly, sitting up here as long as I've been up here is and I want to say this as respectfully as possible, and I put myself there first, is I feel like we continue to try, and I know this isn't entirely true, but it feels like at scale that there's we try to jam too much of a one size fits all, and being unhoused is a sliding scale between someone who just got evicted versus has been unhoused for months, years, if not longer, and we're lacking resources at the state, we're lacking resources at the federal level, and it's incumbent on communities, and we're being tasked with trying to figure out how to balance policy and resources and so forth, and it is extremely difficult. So I appreciate the grace, I appreciate the efforts of all involved, understanding that we're all trying, and I appreciate your role with respect to organizational leadership, because I understand all the proverbial boots on the ground and coffee in the mornings and those day-to-day things that make life just maybe a little bit better, and that's very much appreciated. But it takes that organizational structure and that leadership to kind of put all the pieces together. I mean, we have however many single-family homes with probably empty bedrooms, things. There's got to be novel ideas that we have to try, understanding that there is a limit to resources. So I appreciate the first step. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say shout out to the community and staff. I've already thanked Aura, but I'm going to thank Aura again for bringing extra resources and networking. But I truly believe that these are steps in the right direction, and I would love to see this community be the model for compassionate, effective care. And I think we're in the right direction here, and I'm really grateful for this building. But we missed the ball last year. It's a complicated picture, and I was critical of that. And staff really hustled and made it happen for this year, and our contractor really did. So, hats off to Sabrina and our hardworking staff, as well as our contractor partners and the community who did put all their time and effort into so many different areas to help this process. And I know once we get in the building, it'll be more apparent like where this next direction is for us, to make these micro moves and bring in partners. So I'm just also asking for patience too, and hold us accountable and keep us on the right track as I think our citizens, our staff are. And this is just the beginning. It's 2 years into the beginning here, but I can't wait for this opening.
Councillor Sherrill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dan, and your staff. This is a definite yes for me, period. And I look forward to the days where it's open year-round, not just seasonally, with little gaps of funding here and there. I know it was kind of a rocky road to get here, and there was a couple times where it was like, oh, we're going to keep the building, or we're going to even be able to remodel the building. And I think we're going to look back and think, hopefully say that this is one of the best investments that Ashland has made. And I truly believe that. And I would have loved to see some more language of what we could expect, at least so we could show the public. But I'll tell you, on more than one occasion, I've seen your staff go above and beyond, both paid and unpaid, and I would bet on you and your staff any day. So you guys are going to have to set the standard as you lead with this new building. And I think you guys are going to do a great job. You've already worked through a lot of growing pains, being the first project turnkey. I'm aware of the processes that you've gone through with your staff, and I just look forward to this awesome investment that our community has signed up for. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think one of the things that is important to keep in mind is just the larger context within which this decision is being made. So we know right now we are experiencing a food emergency, that social service organizations have had their funding cut, that there is less help out in the world available for the people who need it the most. And there is a lot of uncertainty about what that looks like for the next several months. And so to me, what this is a very fortuitous coming together of resources in a community partnership that is continuing to bear fruit for this community. And this is the power of community partnerships, the city bringing what it can bring, our partners bringing what they can bring, our city staff going, just above and beyond in order to get this building open. We wouldn't even be having this conversation if our staff hadn't been able to move this construction process along at a very fast clip for local government. It's hard to do this sort of thing in a quick way, and we did it. And so to me, this is completely consistent with the ad hoc committee's process, because we recognize that along the road to whatever this building eventually becomes, that there would be opportunities for transitional uses, for things that could happen in the meantime. And who knows where this all ends up going, but to me, the process is an appropriate process for us to undergo at this point, and to take advantage of this incredible offer by our community partner and to match it with our infrastructure that we have. So I'm very supportive of us accepting this offer and moving forward in partnership with ORA so that we can get people in and out of the cold this winter, and we can help them get to the services that they need to get to. If there is no further discussion, roll call please, Alyssa.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Motion pass.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, everyone.
Let's take a break. We will come back at 7:35 by this clock on the left. I call the meeting back to order. We are now to the second item under new business, ratification of the 3-year labor agreements between IAFF Local 1269 and Ashland Parks and Recreation Teamsters Local 223.
Yeah.
Sabrina.
Okay, so we have 2 contracts tonight before you. Molly, the HR director, is going to go through a few slides, and then we're happy to answer questions. I think a point that may be confusing that I just want to touch on before we go is that the parks employees were originally included in the management resolution that council passed back in August, but because they were in the process of unionizing, it was requested that we pause that. So that was never implemented for them. So they've been operating under the prior management resolution. And so now this is the contract that they would be operating under. So just a clarification point. And then I'll hand it over to Molly. Thanks, Molly.
Good evening. So the last time the IAFF contract was approved was July 18th, 2023. And then, as Sabrina just mentioned, the parks was grouped in with the non-rep resolution that was approved August 5th, 2025. So this is just a brief overview of the timeline. So August 15th, 2022, council approved the prior non-represented agreement with parks employees included. And then July 18th, 2023, council approved the IAFF agreement. We had the comp and class study, and then we had some executive sessions. And comp and class study was presented to council May 20th and 25. And then, like I mentioned, August 5th, the non-rep resolution was passed, which included, at the time, parks employees. So the collective bargaining agreement process, near the end of the term of the current contract, we usually get a letter from the union requesting to open the contract. I did put a little section in here because the Teamsters is a brand new contract. So we get notified by the Employment Relations Board that a certain group of employees would like to unionize. And so we go through that process. And then we continue just like we would with any other negotiations. We have several meetings, we come to an agreement, we draft a contract, and then we present it to you. So for the Parks Teamsters, this is a history of the benefits that they've had and what we have offered. So 2022 to 2025 is the first column. That's what was presented, that's in the non-rep resolution that they were part of. 2025 to 2028, that middle column, that's when they were part of the non-rep group, which we paused. And then in the Teamsters, 2025 to 2028, it is the exact same compensation package.
Councillor Boo?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this. So it's essentially what you're saying is that exactly what it was under the non-rep is the same as it is under this union agreement. Does that include overtime?
Yes.
So it's the same overtime rules?
The difference is under the non-rep, it was at time and a half. This one is at double time, which is the same as the laborers.
Okay, so the cost isn't actually 1-for-1. There is a difference, is what I'm understanding.
If
the overtime is different, right? That affects the costs to the city.
Right.
So it's not a 1-for-1.
No, I'm just talking about yeah, this is just the benefits that were.
Right. I'm trying to understand because in here it says that basically everything's covered, it's paid for, it's budgeted for, because it's the same exact pay, benefits, everything is the same as it was under the non-rep. And then now we have a union contract. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to understand is it exactly 1-for-1 or are there differences? Because if there's differences, then it affects the cost, right? And I'm not opposed to the cost, But I just think it's important to understand that if it says that the costs are the same, but in reality the costs are different, it's helpful to know what that difference is.
So I think you can think about it like this. The contract that you're looking at is exactly the same as the laborers because they're the most like. And so when we did the ERB process, we petitioned for parks to be under the laborers because their job positions are very similar. And that did not get ruled in our favor. So they were unionized as Teamsters. And so their contract matches that in terms of operational necessities. So boot allowance, overtime, things like that. But we already provide similar compensation for items like that outside of a contract. And so the overtime may be different, but the amount of overtime that Parks utilizes is very small.
So I guess that's not, because I'm not talking about LIUNA. I'm talking about what Parks employees were being paid under the management resolution and the non-represented employees.
So they made time and a half, and now they'll make 2 times.
Right.
But I'm saying the amount of overtime that Parks does is minimal.
So you're saying based on the amount of overtime they do, there isn't going to be a cost difference?
Well, it depends on the level of emergency we may have. So if
Right.
you remember, we had that huge snowstorm. So we had a lot of overtime throughout the city with snowplows, parks going in and clearing out branches. So I can't predict, the level of overtime. Is it in line with similar job positions? Yes.
Okay, so it's an assumption, and then the follow-up question to that is, do we have contingencies? Does Parks have contingency to be able to cover if the overtime is more than what we have anticipated and budgeted previously?
So like all general funds do, yes.
Okay.
Because we have a general fund contingency.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Molly. Oh, did you have a follow-up question, Councilor Duquesne?
I did, thank you.
Go
Mayor.
ahead.
So, Molly, when I look at that, it kind of piggybacking off of Councilor Bloom's question. So it's, when I look at the parks, their benefits, their pay, and their longevity, and the similarities and the assumption that we will not have the overtime, but looking at what's been in pace for parks for this time, and I don't know what would bring them to a decision to have to go be unionized.
We can't speak to that.
You can't speak to that. Can you speak to how much money we would have just in case we have this overtime? We don't know. I don't want to assume. I like that question about the contingency that we would have if there's additional overtime. We did have a brutal winter last year. And do we know that dollar amount?
For the general fund contingency?
To cover just in case we do have overtime or we have a brutal winter.
So I'd have to look at the financial report to see from earlier. So if you have another question, I can get back to you.
I don't at this time, but you can get back to us.
Okay. Go ahead and carry on, Molly.
So for the IAFF contract, this is the benefit package that they approved, so 2022 to 2025. You can see their COLAs there, and the difference, they did 4, 4, and 4 this year, and then the addition of the Christmas Eve holiday. So we did offer the same package that we offered to all bargaining units this year, and they elected this instead.
So to go back to your earlier question, we have 1.2 million in contingency right now.
1.2.
1.25.
1.3.
1.256376.
1.3. Thank you.
So as discussed during the August 5th council business meeting for the non-rep resolution, these were the cost savings that were highlighted. So parks, it will just carry forward for parks on that.
Councilor Bloom?
So just to clarify, the Parks and Rec Department made reductions in savings to cover the contract increases here.
Correct.
That's what that says?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's crystal clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then this is for the IAFF. These are things that the fire department pinpointed to cover the cost of the contract increase.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, quick question. Actually, going back to that, because it just occurred to me. So, were these reductions and savings to cover these contract increases, were these done after the contract was done, or was this done during the management resolution to cover the differences then?
The management resolution.
So when we did the management resolution, Parks cut these items to be able to cover those salaries.
Correct.
Okay.
Questions? Councillor Sherrill?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Last slide, if you could go back one. When we're looking at fire department savings to cover contractual increases, when I look at the third item, I'm assuming that's maybe conflagration for sending personnel and equipment potentially out of the region or out of state. And obviously that's a big number. How do we do more of that?
I guess we hope for more wildfires.
Well,
So we have mutual aid agreements, and so if there's one, if we're able to respond based on our staffing levels, it's the chief's decision. We respond, and not just in Oregon, but also in California and other states. And so typically we are pretty good partners, and so we have quite a bit of this going on during wildfire season.
follow up to the city manager. So with current staffing levels, that dictates our ability to be able to deploy.
Yeah, we have to be able to cover our need here before we will deploy elsewhere.
Copy, thanks.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Sabrina, this may be for you relative to the Parks Agreement. So I understand, I think I understand what you were saying relative to this current budget biennium, but to the extent that you could speak from a financial standpoint, what does this look like from any kind of differential for subsequent budgets relative to this? Would it be an increase than what would be baseline if they hadn't unionized? Or, I mean, they certainly have the right to, but like what effect is this going to have down the road?
So like all the other unions, they've agreed to the same benefit package. So in the third year, there's a 2% COLA. And so much like the other unions, 3 years from now, we will renegotiate. And so typically COLAs are based on CPI. Benefits are a discussion between the entity providing them and the union and what we need to do there. So we would follow the same process with the Parks Union moving forward. What that means for the city overall is we will continue to have these expenses moving forward.
And so there would be and then we'd have to work through what the levels of services are based on what our expenses and so forth, correct?
Right. So in your packet, you'll see that the IAFF union agreement covers 38 positions, Parks covers 24. Right. So the more people you have, the more costly it is, and that is directly tied to service levels.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. The floor is open for a motion, and there are two different topics to take up. Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, I move to approve the 3-year labor agreement with Teamsters 223 Parks and Recreation Union and authorize city manager to sign the 3-year agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councillor Bloom?
No, I appreciate collective bargaining and the process, and that's all.
Councillor Sherrill?
Yes, I'm good. Thanks.
Any further discussion?
No, I'm good.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
No.
Hanson?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
No.
Bloom?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, we move on now to the labor agreement with IAFF Local 1269. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom?
I move to approve the 3-year labor agreement with IAFF Local 1269 Ashland Fire and Rescue Union and authorize the city manager to sign the 3-year agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councillor Bloom?
No.
Councillor Sherrill? Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. We move on now. Thank you, Molly. We move on now to the franchise agreement versus right-of-way ordinance.
All
Sabrina.
right. So this was asked to be brought forward for consideration, and it's been made very clear to me that you would rather talk to Chad than to me about this. So I have had Chad come in to help with this discussion, as he is our resident expert. But essentially what we're asking for tonight is kind of a council determination on how they'd like to move forward. So as you may recall, our franchise agreement with Avista is a 10-year contract with them. It is due to expire. When it expires, it will move to a year-to-year contract. So we have the opportunity to do nothing and let that just roll into a year-to-year. We could renew our franchise agreement with Avista. And then kind of the third opportunity is to develop a right-of-way ordinance that would replace the franchise agreement. And so in your packet, you have some information kind of about what a franchise agreement versus a licensing ordinance does, as well as kind of what's going on in the rest of the city in terms of one over the other. Something that's kind of unique about Ashland is we own most of the utilities in our right-of-way. And so we're really looking at natural gas and telecom as being outside, excuse me, of the utilities that we own. And we'll have to have some consideration with the amount of time we spent on the telecom ordinance and how that may impact if we choose to go with a right-of-way ordinance. And then depending on how you'd like to go, that will determine kind of the level of involvement that staff will need to take.
So we've had some discussions about when we take up issues that are brought forward by members of the council to have the members of the council open up the conversation. So if this is, Sabrina, this would be an appropriate time to pass it over to Councilor Kaplan to help us orient to the conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Sabrina, for introducing that. You took some of what I was going to say to introduce this. Obviously, in December 2015, the city signed a 10-year franchise agreement with Avista to provide natural gas services in Ashland. Obviously, that, as you saw in the packet, that 10-year agreement ends next month, and so we have this option to decide how to go forward. About 18 months ago, though, when we were considering the question of natural gas connections in new residential construction, one right-of-way regulation was one of the options that was on the table. And we decided to go in a different direction in regulating natural gas in new connections. As you recall, earlier this year, we approved a pollution impact fee that will go into effect January 1st. But at that time, when we were giving direction to staff into the Climate Environmental Policy Advisory Committee, we said that we would like to bring the question of the franchise agreement or ordinance back, because we've noticed that in many different cities across the state, they're going away from a franchise agreement as regulating their natural gas services or many other services towards an ordinance, which gives more flexibility. 10 years ago, you'd see very few cities that would have ordinances regulating their natural gas service, but today, you saw in the packet, there's about 10 of them, I think. So the purpose in bringing it to this meeting today is really to give direction, to hear more about the trade-offs. What are the pros and the cons of regulating our natural gas service with a 10-year franchise agreement versus an ordinance, which would allow the city to, regulate the service and have a little bit more flexibility about how to go forward and anticipate any changes as they come. So with that introduction, I know that Chad has prepared a few slides to take us through this.
Yes, good evening, Council and Mayor. Glad to be here again. This is, I've had a little bit more time since the council packet, so I was able to vet some more of these cities. So it's going to be just 2 slides with a summary of what we found with the limited research time we've had, and then some Q&A if you all have some for us to help guide us moving forward. So I was able to personally run through and look at 21 different cities in the state of Oregon, and that primarily meant looking at their municipal codes and their fee schedules to see what was in there and try to verify whether or not they had a franchise agreement also, which is a factor here. So when looking at these, and we'll look at the list of the cities on the next slide so you can see those, but 3 had a franchise agreement. One, Eugene uses the privilege tax under statute currently and don't have a franchise agreement. Then 17 have a license or right-of-way ordinance. Most of these do tend to have language when you go through it that carves out the ability for the city to use a franchise agreement where warranted for the public interest. So it does leave that door open if the city deems necessary moving forward. And then there's one, I found Corvallis does have a right-of-way licensing ordinance, but they use a franchise, so that carve-out opportunity was used in one place that I found so far in these. Let's see, we've got 13 of the 17 right-of-ways have occurred in that last 10-year period since we signed our last franchise agreement. So it does seem that that is the trend for cities moving that direction. Obviously, I haven't looked at every city in the state, so I can't completely state that with authority. But the Bend attorney, when Bend did pass their right-of-way ordinance, they had done some research, and their slide that was shared with me said, "Why now?" And it said Bend is falling behind, and it had a list of 14 cities which were on this list. So they felt there was a trend. That was their interpretation at the time. And then looking at a breakdown of these cities with their population in mind, 10 of those cities are of similar size to Ashland, so it's not a big versus small, and I call 30,000 and under similar to Ashland for the purposes of this number. So we'll look at those next right here. These are the various cities. I was able to look at each of their ordinances. You'll see they're listed, there's a column on the left and a column on the right, but the rightmost column in each is their adoption date. So you can see the most recent right-of-way was adopted by Westland, then Bend, then Woodburn. You'll notice between the 20th, it's the year at the end there. So clearly we have a COVID window. There's only been a couple in the last couple of years, but prior to that, there seemed to be some momentum in moving towards those right-of-way agreements. And forgive the language, sometimes the way it's worded in the ordinance is a little different. Sometimes they'll say a license with privilege tax or a right-of-way, but what we're really talking about are two distinct situations. One is using a bilateral contract for a franchise agreement or having an ordinance passed that dictates the terms for usage of your right-of-way, and there's a license fee that's applied to those users of the right-of-way based typically on a % of gross revenue. One of these cities had some interesting information. There's a lot of details. If you start digging into these, they're all a little bit different, but most of them seem to look the same. And again, I'll leave that to the legal experts if we go down that road and you want that type of information. But they're fairly cookie cutter. It seems like everyone said, hey, that looks good, and we'll write ours very similarly. They have similar language. And again, there's those couple outliers like the privilege tax in Eugene highlighted. As far as pros and cons, there was one thing in the packet, just to back up. You might notice that a couple of these cities are different on this list than what were in the packet, and that's just because I've had more time to vet them from the original source. So the list of right-of-way licenses has grown in this slide versus the packet. And then on page 2, there was a bit of a confusing bullet there. It was called Enforcement Burden of Monitoring Compliance and Potential Resistance from Utilities. It's more the first half of that sentence that I wanted to just make a couple of comments about. If you do a little bit more of a dive and you look at the staff monitoring elements, it seems a franchise agreement tends to have a moderate amount of staff input, whereas a license ordinance would have a higher amount of staff monitoring requirements. So just wanted to break this down into essentially 3 categories. Enforcement complexity. Typically a franchise agreement would have a higher level of difficulty per dispute, but fewer disputes, whereas a licensing ordinance would have a lower amount per dispute, but typically or perhaps more frequent than under a franchise. The administrative burden is usually seen as lower and for ongoing administrative requirements in a franchise agreement, whereas in a licensing ordinance, it would be higher. And then last, related to other bullets, is the relative flexibility. Franchise agreements are seen as having low flexibility for the city to maneuver, and a licensing ordinance is typically seen to have a high amount of flexibility because you can change things on a shorter term. So that's sort of the lay of the land on that one. And then I'd say, just from my standpoint, in looking at this information, where we sit now is there was not, and I leave the official legal opinion to city attorney, but when you read the existing franchise agreement, we needed to provide 180 days to terminate the existing franchise agreement. That was not done 180 days prior to, depending on how you read it, December 1st or December 31st. So that would still have to happen if you want to move on to something else, meaning that clock would start ticking. You'd want to make that decision probably in May to provide that termination if you wanted to switch to a different type of agreement. That being said, there's no hurry to do anything right now. We are existing, and the analogy I use is we had a year lease for an apartment and we move automatically into a month-to-month. For the franchise, we had a 10-year agreement. Now we automatically have moved into that year-to-year scenario.
Councilor Bloom.
Thank you. Good analogy. So yeah, I mean, hearing that there's no rush kind of is nice. I mean, and I saw that 180 days, and so this is obviously a decision that really we'll be making next year. That said, a lot to chew on here. There's kind of three things that I'm curious about, or that are of importance to me, and that's which option gives us the least legal costs. In terms of having disputes, as you mentioned, the highest amount of revenue generation for the city, but also the lowest cost to the customers, to the utility customers that use natural gas, making sure that they're not burdened by the decisions that we make, especially in the times that we live in now. So I wasn't able to suss out which one of these met that. Do you have any just general thoughts? I'm not expecting you to get into details about it.
The first question I defer to legal as to potential costs, so maybe that we can do that a little later. As far as revenue generation, there is a third kind of road, and it was in the packet, and that's the privilege tax, and that's the one that has a statutory limitation of 5%. But if you are operating under a right-of-way ordinance, you'll see that Gresham has a 10% essentially a license fee. A franchise agreement can have a variety of numbers as well. So it's really up to the decision made either in the franchise agreement or the right-of-way to determine that revenue. And I think your last question is the flip side to the same coin. Is there costs and whatever it might be, a licensing fee in a right-of-way ordinance or a franchise fee, they're probably all going to be passed forward or incorporated into the business how they determine best.
Yeah, thank you. And that's kind of as I expected. So really, I mean, no matter what you're doing in terms of setting what that percentage is, you're trying to strike a balance, right? Of like, how does the city recoup costs and generate some revenue, but also how do we have predictability and no shock on the utility user, right? I mean, a lot of people still have natural gas and they shouldn't be punished cost-wise because that's something that they have, especially when people are being squeezed every month right now, it feels like. So
yeah, I think that's it's entirely in that political realm of what does the city want to do or set for a rate, because it does affect people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Chad, can you pull your microphone in a little bit closer to you? Thanks. So when we think about this 180 days and the potential for an ordinance, the timing of that would be, and I'm just clarifying, that we would potentially work on an ordinance if that's what the direction the council decides to go. And then when we have 180 days left of the year, we would time it so that that ordinance would be completing at that point, and then we would notify the utility. Is that what we should be thinking of? Or would the notification kind of start the shot clock in terms of us getting that ordinance in place before the end of the year?
Well, I guess I'll back up and say you could write a right-of-way ordinance and have it be in effect tomorrow, but you would have an existing valid contract that you would have to honor. And you see language in some of these municipal codes stating, while there is a valid existing franchise agreement, that shall rule the day, and we have to honor that. And then legal's probably gonna say you should do, if you do that, make sure you do the termination notice, dot your i's and cross your t's, and make sure they're well aware.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this question is probably for Sabrina. What would the possibility be of doing both with the intent to kind of stare and compare here? Would something like drafting an ordinance versus working with Avista to draft a franchise agreement, and then council can choose? And the reason I'm asking is I'm trying not to violate the ironclad law of unintended consequences. And Scott's not here. There are things, as I go through the franchise agreement, there are a lot of things that are extremely important to our public works department, to other stuff. There's all kinds of costs and other things. I don't know how I would make this decision on which way to go this evening relative to this. Is that something that we would be able to I mean, how would that work? Do you work with Avista to draft a franchise agreement and potentially, like when it says finalized, I assume not signed?
So the franchise agreement is in the packet tonight that Avista has.
Are you saying it would be just identical and you wouldn't renegotiate any of the terms on it?
So we've had some edits that we want for reporting put in there, but that would be up to council, because really the thing up for negotiation is the franchise fee. Beyond that, so right now it's set at 5%, right? And in terms of the right-of-way ordinance, that's just staff time spent on drafting an ordinance that you may or may not adopt. I think when we're looking at other cities, they have multiple franchisees they're looking to oversee with the right-of-way. So it would apply to our utilities as well, but we have franchise fees set for them as well. We just don't have a franchise fee agreement with ourselves, so to speak, that we're reeing up, right? And so any sort of monetary impact would be the same for our utilities with the right-of-way ordinance. So it's either way.
Okay, if I may.
Follow-up.
Yeah, to follow up to that, I guess maybe I'm not necessarily, I mean, I'm certainly interested in the monetary consequences, but also just the other things, the logistical ones and so forth. So, but relative to the monetary, so if you said the only thing that's under negotiation, I think if I heard you with a franchise agreement, would be the fee, and it would certainly be up to the franchisee, Avista, to determine how much, if not all of that would be passed on to customers. That's what they would do, correct?
So I would assume 100% would be
That's what
passed
I
on
would
to
assume, but I
customers.
just want to make sure that, okay, yep, thanks.
Councillor Sherrill?
Thank you, Mayor. And this is maybe just like a policy or a point of order, maybe question. If we are starting a new process where two members of this body can bring something to council, I like how we're doing this and we're able to present it. If I have a question for the two that brought it, could I ask that now? Would that be appropriate
Yes.
to ask under our new format that we don't really, we haven't done or haven't seen? Is the idea to rewrite this now or look at other options? Is it to increase costs, to put a further burden on using natural gas to help meet our climate goals? Or is it just because it's expired and we're looking to like build a better mousetrap? I know that some of what was passed earlier in this year has increased, has put the burden on the end user, and I'm just wondering what the intent is here.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Sherrill. No, the intent really is, as it was 18 months ago, to take the opportunity of the 10-year franchise agreement. You only have this opportunity once every 10 years. So it seems sensible to take the opportunity to explore what those regulations of our service provider, in this case, should look like. And my interest is in making sure that going forward, we would have as much flexibility as possible. So if circumstances change, over the next 10 years, in year 5 and year 7, we wouldn't have to wait till the end of the 10-year period. Ideally, we would have had some analysis of this and some discussion of this before now. But I think, as Councillor Bloom sort of said, I'll put words in his mouth, no harm, no foul. We still have time. It's not an urgent thing. We have a year-to-year agreement, so we can take the time to do it now. I'm not thinking at this point on what a fee should be. I think that's a separate discussion that this council would need to have, regardless of whether it's a franchise agreement or a or an ordinance. But that's not, at this point, I'm just really interested in what is the instrument that makes the most sense for this city to preserve our flexibility and to preserve our ability to advocate for the interests of our citizens with respect to our natural gas provider.
Thank you.
And I would just
to
add-
follow. Oh, go ahead.
I would just add that one of the things that often happens is that existing contracts almost automatically re-up. And our staff, of course, makes they get out ahead of this, they start working on the negotiated terms, that sort of thing. And we see that. In the packet, we have a 10-year franchise agreement that has had some initial negotiations in it. So what we're looking to do is to identify whether the council which path the council actually wants to go down before we are presented with, a negotiated franchise agreement, that sort of thing, particularly since the CPAC came forward and suggested that one of the things that we should think about is franchise agreements, because a lot of communities are looking at those very closely, specifically to give more flexibility, not necessarily to change anything in the immediate space, but to provide flexibility for future councils. And did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, great explanation. Thank you, Mayor. I guess the question I had is, in the last 10 years, have we had any problem with the current agreement? And has there been times when we wished it was more flexible and we have data to show that? Like, is it broke? Do we need to fix it? Is I guess the general question.
Councilor Kaplan?
Well, I wouldn't know over the last 10 years. There's certainly some options that were being considered in terms of a right-of-way, in terms of restricting natural gas in new developments that wouldn't have been possible under a franchise agreement. So that was one of the things that we as a council were considering in terms of a climate impact. It had nothing to do with the fee, had nothing to do with the franchise fee, but we would not have the flexibility to do that with an existing franchise agreement, because we're basically giving our natural gas franchisee the right to, use our right of way regardless.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully, I'm going to see if I can try and synthesize this for us so we could, maybe have a conclusion to this discussion. What I'm hearing, so I'm kind of coming into this like, oh, okay, we're talking about what percentages and how we're going to balance, but now I'm hearing like really the intent is like, what do we want to control? What do we want out of this? Which is cool. That's a great conversation to have. But now we're putting the cart before the horse, because in order to determine if it's a franchise agreement, right, or we do the licensing fee, is dependent on what are the objectives that we're trying to achieve. So I would propose that really what we should do is after the new year, so like in February where that fits in, have a study session, figure out what our objectives are, what we're trying to achieve, and then we can give direction to staff on what mechanism best fits that direction. If that makes sense to anybody.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. And maybe I'll ask another question, Sabrina, and probably Johan, from a process to the process question. So if you were to draft a potential ordinance and I could use the existing franchise agreement as a template, fee notwithstanding to be negotiated, but that will say stays in effect, not in effect, but the language stays the same, so I could use that as one half of the stare and compare. How much time would you need to produce an ordinance that could be reviewed by council so that we could take those and do our due diligence and ask questions and so forth and have the study session that Councilor Bloom is referring to?
I mean, I would use, to be totally honest, the terms are going to be basically the same as what's in the franchise agreement, so I could do it relatively quickly.
The terms will be the same, okay.
I mean, there's not going to be a whole lot of changes. We're pretty limited on what we can restrict by law. So really, it's not a matter of how we're controlling the rights of way. They're getting a right of way.
Sure.
It's more of the process. Legally, we're not going to put our thumb on the scale either way.
Right.
So
for instance, if I may, Mayor, I follow up to this.
Yes, a follow-up.
So an example would be something to the effect of the ordinance unlike a franchise agreement where it's just locked in and it is the contract. With an ordinance, as we know, we could add, subtract, delete. I believe that's the flexibility that Councilor Coughlin was talking with respect to, but we couldn't add or subtract something that would otherwise go against any other state or federal law or something like that, right? So the only question that I guess would be for consideration to stare and compare it at this potential study session would be something like, I would assume, with this flexibility, are there any adverse effects that would cause because of that flexibility? And I'm going somewhere, but that's...
Yeah, from a legal standpoint, no. It's more going to be your administrative time and cost, like doing that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Hanson?
Thank you. Thank you, Chad. Hey, I'm curious, maybe this is a Sabrina question, maybe it's a Chad question. What kind of dollars are we talking about? Like, what kind of gross revenue are we looking at from an annual franchise fee from Avista?
I would have to look it up in the budget. It's not.
It's in the
It's on the finance
I think
report.
it's 300.
It is in the finance report. It's not in
Yeah.
this packet, though.
300.
350,000-ish.
350? Okay.
5%.
Well,
It's not much.
So we can use that as a base, and then we can extrapolate what it might look like at 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10%. The other question I have is, do we know for certain that the end user gets this added to their bill? Are we dealing with an entity that is granular enough that they can single out Ashland and turn up the
Yeah.
the fees? Yeah.
So the end user of any utility is getting the franchise fee.
Right, so they take the Ashland community and make it specific, so instead of 5%, it would be 10% passed on to the user, okay.
Right.
Two great pieces of information, thank you.
Councillor Duquesne?
Mayor. Chad, really quick, my question that was brought up earlier is directed to you. Have we had any concerns with Avista in the past?
The only concern I would have from my position is just not having access to data. That would be my biggest one from a climate analyst perspective.
From a climate analyst, okay. But other than that, no. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I would like to also say that I don't have the proficiency or expertise probably on a lot of the other elements within that contract.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kaplan?
Point of information to the question that came up. Last year in 2020, in the 2024-2025 period, fiscal year, we received $356,131 in natural gas franchise.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you. Another question for you, Johan. Okay, help me understand the legal ramifications of this. And this, we have a franchise agreement, let's call it a contract, right, between two parties. And it's enforceable, obviously, on both sides. If we write code, let's just say, how is that enforceable with respect to a contract with another party? So if we say we want X and we write that into a contract and both parties sign on the dotted line, then we have recourse if either party breaches X. But when you write something into administrative code and that party is not subject to Ashland Municipal Code, what recourse do we have then? Because this is a public utility, right? I mean, it's you don't just say, okay, you're not giving natural gas anymore to our customers, or however that works. What would you do?
Yeah, I would write something into the code that talks to the enforcement of violation of the code. So you would have a clause in there essentially, or a line item in there that talked to what are the ramifications, whether it be a fee or something along those lines. But
And who would adjudicate that? The same people that would adjudicate a contract?
yeah, I mean, there'd be lawyers involved. We would handle either one in-house, to go to your question from costs earlier, but.
Okay. All right.
So I would think about franchise agreement and right-of-way ordinance is the same thing, but with the right-of-way ordinance, with 2 readings, you can change it. A franchise agreement has a set timeline, usually 10 years. Now you could negotiate that. So From a staff perspective, pick one, and we'll do it.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you. And also, what I'm hearing, like Councilor Bloom suggested, like if we have our goals and we come back to the drawing board and we think, well, there might be a community developing in Ashland that we want the option to not bring gas into. We wouldn't be able to do that with our current agreement. So if that's one of our goals, then that would steer us one way or another. I like putting this all out on the table and figuring out exactly what we're trying to do here.
Councillor Duquesne?
I think it's pretty much been asked and answered. Thank you, Counselor. But something really quickly, or we could just leave it as is and come back in a year, correct?
I wouldn't wait a full year because of the 180-day situation.
Yes,
We have to give notice. So I think what we're looking for tonight is whether or not you want us to move forward with drafting a right-of-way ordinance. Because it sounds like you want to look at that ordinance to see what it would look like. So yes or no on that, I think is really the question.
So I do want to stop and take public testimony. We have one person who has signed up to speak to us this evening on this topic. Richard Barth, you'll have 3 minutes at the podium. Your light indicator will move from green to yellow when you have 20 seconds left, and you'll hear a chime, and then at the final, when your time is out, it'll go to red and you'll hear a second chime. Please tell us your name and the city in which you reside.
Richard Barth. I live in Ashland. I've been associated with a number of climate organizations over the last 8 years. I'm not here representing any of those right now. This is my own thoughts. I've mostly heard everything that I wanted to hear, so I won't belabor it. I hope that you do not sign a mild revision of a 10-year contract. I hope that you do give guidance to staff to spend the time to research what ought to be done. I don't have any particular advice on which type of agreement is best for the city. But that we, as was mentioned many times already, flexibility is really important. I would like to point out that we're living in times that are very different from all the previous renewals of this franchise agreement. In order to meet our climate goals, we need to be cycling down the gas network, not expanding it, and that's very different in itself. And so I think there was already a mention of considering geographic restrictions as you are trying to equitably cycle down the gas network. You may need to do things like pick portions of the city and say, okay, we've got all the users gone in this chunk of the city, so now it's time to abandon that piece of the gas network so that we reduce the cost to the remaining users. And when you are cycling it down like that, equity for our low and middle income residents is a very important thing. And so that might play into what you consider when you're setting the franchise or when you're setting the fee structure. Let's leave it at that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bloom?
I'm happy to make a motion.
We're not there yet.
We're not?
Nope. Are there any further questions of staff?
I have one, yes.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, one last one. They keep coming to me. Johan, Sabrina, so I guess my question would be something like this. If we, and actually, I'm sorry, this would probably, correct me if I'm wrong, is my question. This would be a question for Avista, the following, which is, if we add flexibility, and which I don't have any problem with flexibility on behalf of the citizens and so forth, is there a potential for Avista to modify any kind of service that they would be able to offer to our constituents that may adversely affect cost structure, stuff like that? You see what I'm saying? I mean, I know it's semi-rhetorical, but what I'm saying is that another way to say that is if we draft an ordinance, we would find out how, I mean, it may just not be as simple as they offer gas or not. I don't know. I'm asking if there are any, again, going back to the unintended consequences, of flexibility, and I kind of see out of the corner of my eyes I might get an answer somewhere else, but, okay. But does that sound right to you? Could anything possibly happen due to the flexibility of an ordinance that would adversely affect the cost structure on the part of Avista?
I think that Avista operates in areas where there's right-of-way ordinances already.
Okay.
And so I think Avista would probably be open to negotiating having a shorter-term franchise agreement as well. So I think it's just, what does council want to do?
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, I wasn't going to answer Councilor Dale's question. I was just going to ask another question, which is, of these cities that have a right-of-way ordinance, how many of them are in the Avista service area? I can see a few right off the bat. Central Point, I can see Eagle Point. There's probably a handful of others as well.
I believe LeGrand is also, there's 3 of Avista's territories kind of cut up into 3 little small portions within the state.
So it's not a new thing.
There's examples here, yeah, to go to that point.
Okay. Medford's a
And
franchise.
I think, to Councilor Dale's question, there's the Public Utilities Commission regarding adjudication and regarding underlying requirements. It gets pretty deep into the regulatory world if you want to understand obligations, and I frankly don't know them, but there's a lot out there.
Any further questions of staff?
Can I testify?
Have you filled up a paper?
Out of papers, but I wrote it on an agenda.
What was that? It was submitted late. Yes, you can.
I probably answered most of the questions you all asked.
You will have 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium.
Thank you. Steve Vincent with Avista Utilities. One question that you asked is the franchise fee. So we're required by law. It's OAR 860 020 040 sub B that all utilities will pass on all regulated utilities will pass through. It's a surcharge, kind of looks like a sales tax surcharge on the bill. So it's not by our choice. That's something imposed by the PUC on the regulated utilities, not the consumer-owned utilities. As far as which way to go, we could open up the franchise agreement and take a look at what it is that you propose to change that's there. That's open to discussion. Most of the right-of-way ordinances that you're seeing on that list look just like a franchise agreement. So for Avista, we've been invited into the City of LeGrand, City of Grants Pass, and not the City of Eagle Point to help them actually draft those. When the City of LeGrand and the City of Grants Pass had their proposed language between Pacific Power and myself, we could identify things in federal and state law that they weren't aware of that couldn't be enforced. So we work cooperatively with both of those jurisdictions. In LeGrand, it was the electric co-op that I worked with on that. However, in all those jurisdictions except for Grants Pass, they went ahead and agreed to a franchise agreement on top of the right-of-way ordinance for a variety of reasons. So Eagle Point, Central Point, LeGrand, other cities that have considered the right-of-way ordinance but chose not to. In 2024, the city of Medford and Phoenix chose to not pursue a right-of-way ordinance, I think due to the administrative burden. The last thing that I'll say, our preference is franchise agreement. So I'll use this analogy. If you imagine a grocery store needing to get a mortgage to build a building and they can't get a 30-year lease or a 20-year lease on that property, they probably aren't going to get the mortgage because there's no term. And if you imagine Safeway trying to replace refrigerators, and if they had to borrow money to do upgrades and maintain, if they're at the end of the lease and there's no term left, they're going to probably have a problem borrowing money. And so the utilities in the country, we go into debt to maintain infrastructure. And that's not to grow, that's actually to replace and repair what's existing. And so we do have covenants in our corporate mortgage that refer to franchise agreements, as do other utilities. And I'd be happy to dive into that further and show you where that's at. Thank you.
Thank you. So any final questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, I moved to direct staff to come back or to develop a study session. I think February makes the most sense given the timeline. March. I thought April is when it expires.
So just to add some context, February, March study sessions are full. So April 6th would be the first study session.
And when is the deadline for the franchise?
So we have, 180 days from Adjournment, December 31st.
Oh, it's December 31st. Okay, great. Okay, so great. Yeah, so I take that back. Let me restate my motion. So I direct staff to schedule a study session in April for this council to determine what our objectives are around natural gas and whether a licensing fee or a franchise agreement or a privilege tax is the best mechanism to achieve our policy objectives.
Is there a second?
Mayor, may I ask for clarification of what's expected of
Yes,
this
you may.
motion? Thank you. So Councillor Bloom, are you expecting as part of this motion that staff would come with an ordinance for our review so that we can understand this?
I considered that, but one of the things that popped into my head is that Johan will come with a shell ordinance, and then we're going to talk about objectives, and then we'll have to go back and re-edit the ordinance, and it just seems to be a time saver to just say, here's our objectives, draft an ordinance, and then we can review it from there.
So if your motion includes the draft ordinance, then I would be in support of it.
And it
Okay,
does not?
I'll throw in the draft ordinance.
Okay, would you restate your motion, Councillor Bloom?
Yes, thanks. Restating, I moved to direct staff to schedule a study session in April for this council to determine what our policy objectives are and what the best mechanism is, whether it's a licensing fee, franchise agreement, or privilege tax, and for staff to also include a draft ordinance if we were to decide to go towards a licensing fee mechanism.
Second.
Councillor Bloom? Councillor Dale?
No, other than just to say that I just want the maximum amount of information so that we can make the most informed decision. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I could support this. I think it's a great idea. I'm not knowing what I'm not knowing, so I would love Chad and others to come with materials for us to consider at said study session. I don't want to just pull out our objectives, which are great, but I want to add them to things that we haven't thought about yet. I appreciated the testimony. I didn't think of it in terms of a geography issue or opportunity there. I just thought of it more of like a blanket opportunity, but there's other things to consider too that we haven't came up with. So if that could be part of this, I totally support it, and I look forward to it.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to support this motion too. I think my interest is in making sure that we get all maximum information on the table and opportunity to think it through. There's a lot of expertise. Obviously, I think I appreciate Chad's expertise that he brought to this and the work that he did in fairly short notice, and also our city attorney. But there's also other expertise on these matters that I'd like to hear in that study session as well. So I'm happy to support this motion.
Mayor, can I ask
Yes.
a point of clarification as to the direction?
Mm-hmm.
This is just specific to a natural gas ordinance, right? No, we're not talking a general, a lot of this stuff was like omnibus rights of way. We're just specific ordinance to basically a Vista.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would just add in that I'm looking forward to this conversation as well. There are really big questions in front of government entities around the future of our communities and the impact of an existential threat that is driven by the combustion of fossil fuels. And so I'm very interested in seeing how do we maintain as much flexibility as we can, and how do we understand what those options mean and what the unintended consequences might be, that we dig into it deeper. I think it's absolutely true that the world has changed since the last time this franchise agreement was put in place, but that we also shouldn't move in a way that is not, we need to move in a way that is measured and understands what the impacts would be of these different pathways. So I am in support of the council taking this action as well. Any final comments or deliberations? Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this up. I, too, appreciate what was brought up from some of the people who gave testimony. I'm totally open to looking at other possibilities. And so in this proposal that's put in front of us, I know an ordinance will come back to us. In that ordinance, it's not something that I think, Councilor Bloom, you brought up about having all the facts in front of us. I agree with you 100%. And what is the end game? What does that look like? But I don't know if we'll have any dollars and cents in that. Is that correct? I should have asked a question. I'm sorry.
So we would just propose it at a 5%. So it would be status quo.
So
and then
it would stay the
so a
same.
like for like of what we have now, and then council can give direction from there.
So we wouldn't know. Well, I will move forward with this just to look at all the possibilities, but we'll see.
All right. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Jarrell?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. And we're now on to our City Council retreat agenda. Sabrina.
So in your packet, you have a draft of the council retreat. So if you recall, I brought forward the date back in September, I think, and the topics. And so it was requested to bring back a draft of the agenda. So that's what you have in your packet for review.
Questions? Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to go first since I was the one that made the motion to ask for this retreat. Going over the agenda real quick. So I see a lot of the things that I was hoping to get to. One thing that stands out to me that doesn't really make a lot of sense is City Finance 101. I'm trying to wrap my head around why we need to sit through a PowerPoint that does 101 City Finance when we've gone through budget cycles, we've got manuals, we've done this work. I feel like if we're sitting up in this position at this dais, that we don't need a 101 presentation, and that's kind of steering away from the purpose, the intent of this retreat, and just takes up unnecessary time that could be used more wisely.
So I don't think you necessarily need a PowerPoint, but this packet is for public consumption. And so many of our public don't understand what a general fund is versus other funds and what a reserve fund is and our policy around that. Because this clearly is just laying out, here's what a general fund is, here's where the money comes from, here's where the money goes, similar for the reserve fund. And so it's just really kind of here's some information for those who may be interested in kind of where we're focused on during this retreat, which is the general fund and the reserve fund. So I think it's not really for council, although some people are at a different level on council, depending. And so it is a good review since we don't deep dive into it all the time. If you want to review it, it's there. But I think really we're going to start the discussion with the forecasting.
So I'll follow up on that question. So we would be looking at a very short, these agenda items are not all the same length of time. That
No.
first one would be a very short intro into the discussion.
I think it's really just, here's what we're talking about today. Information's in your packet. So I would assume council will read the packet before they attend the retreat.
Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that. So I think, totally get that point. Yeah, public consumption. I think it'd be great if in the agenda for this meeting that you include, you've got the Ollie videos, you can put the budget in there, you can put that information, but to spend time to open it up as a discussion, opens it up for questions, debate, going back and forth. And again, what could be really a 5-minute thing is probably going to turn into a 30-minute thing. We see that every single time that we come into this room to meet. And again, I am very, very confident that when we talk about forecasting, reserve fund goals, cost cutting, revenue generation. Those are going to be very, very robust conversations, and we have a limited amount of time to get through this. And so unless we want to just keep adding more and more retreats talking about the same subjects, because that's what's going to happen if we don't get through this, I really would advise and would hope that my colleagues would strike City Finance 101 as a presentation, but include all of that material in the packet for the public.
So as a note, it's reports and presentation. So as I stated, we'll start with the general fund forecasting. It's really just to lay it out for council and the general public so that they know what you're talking about. So you don't need to discuss letter A at all. It will just be a report in the packet.
Okay.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Sabrina, just under item B, the general fund forecasting and discussion, will part of that item be a presentation on our current general fund policies and where we line up with those before we dig into forward-looking forecasting, just so kind of a baseline?
Yeah, so around the general fund, you know, the requirement for what we have to have for operating and things like that will be reviewed.
Just
and then
the
we'll be doing
financial policies for
yeah, the 2 and the 5 year forecast.
Thank you.
Councillor Hansen.
Thank you, Mayor. It occurs to me that 2026 is going to be a good. Well, it's planned to be a big strategic plan year for a couple different big strategic plans. So I was surprised that we didn't have a bullet item on here for how to look at these strategic plan opportunities and a chance to talk about them. So I propose that we shuffle things around or squeeze in a discussion for our city master plan, as well as our electrical grid master plan. You know, all the plans, whatever umbrella is big enough to cover them all. I'd like to see a bullet item there for us to discuss.
So I want to be careful. The focus of the retreat is on the general fund. And I think the strategic plan and any other, you know, rate studies and other plans should be discussed another time. I think it should really be focused on finances, and strategic plan is a whole other process that will come back to council for. And obviously finances is a big part of realizing the goals of the strategic plan, but there's not much to discuss because we don't have one in place right now.
Well,
go ahead.
If I may, my thought there is that we are going to be talking about service levels, and we're going to be talking about where we're going to be steering our little city. And I believe that all of that is really fundamental to our general fund, and you know, our revenue and expenditures are exactly a manifestation of what we have to do and what we want to do. And so I think I'm just going to put in a deeper plug that we should take some time to think more about what we want and what we don't want, and how that is going to adjust the general fund. And then as we get into the planning part, I think we've already built a good foundation for it. So I think we're remiss to not be talking about our strategic plans.
I see. One thing to follow up with that is, in our conversations around this agenda, is that we would come out of this with the ability to create a calendar of the timing for when we would investigate different elements. So some of these elements are already underway with staff. The strategic planning element would come in. There isn't a discussion of service levels here specifically because we haven't done the strategic planning yet. But the question then becomes, after we see the forecasting and we talk about the reserve fund goals, that starts to orient us to what kind of policy do we want in place for, or what kind of goal do we want in place for the reserve fund. And then we're going to be looking at cost-cutting measures and the timeline for what that looks like, as well as revenue generation elements. And then whatever we prioritize as the things that are most important for staff to go through, they will then go and put into a calendar that also includes the strategic planning and the service level pieces. But we don't have the information to talk about service level issues at this retreat because we haven't engaged in the strategic planning process yet. Does that help? Because I know that information's not in the packet.
And I will say what will come forward for general fund departments, so police, fire, community development, admin, finance, et cetera, is what is mandatory, so what we're legally required to do versus discretionary. So we will make that distinction because a lot of what we do is required by state law or is required once we agree to something. And so we will have that lined out for each department so you all can kind of get thinking about what we have to do versus what we're choosing to do as we move through that strategic plan discussion as well.
Does that address your question, Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I see I see the order of operations, and I appreciate that, Mayor. I know that we're going to be talking about the vision in the future of Ashland, and I know that we're going to be laying a lot of foundation work for the strategic plans, and I know we don't have a lot of time, so I get it. Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for this, Sabrina and others who worked on the agenda. I'm broadly fine with it. I'm mostly interested in the discussion of B, the general fund forecasting, and discussion. What sort of material can we expect to have in the packet ahead of time? Because I'm interested in making sure that we've got materials in advance so that we can actually have an informed discussion rather than trying to, on the fly, discuss it.
So we're working on some visuals, but really it's kind of worst case, best case scenario. So we have some big factors that influence cost for the general fund, right? So COLA, healthcare, materials and services, like tariffs have been an issue, right? So Bryn has been working on kind of here is, worst case, best case scenario, and here are the factors and the percentage we're using to explore those scenarios for forecasting. So you'll have numbers in the packet. It won't be like an interactive spreadsheet, obviously, but we'll have items like that in the packet. You'll also be having a history of kind of general fund usage by department, so you can see how that's changed over time as well.
So I understand that on the expenditure side, and I'm interested also on the revenue side.
So yeah, I mean, revenues are pretty basic for general fund in terms of property tax. So we'll have all of that as well in terms of what is going in and what's coming out.
So yeah, but there's some revenues that are, we had a presentation today that talked about permits and new valuation. So when a new development goes in, we have Beach Creek down on North Mountain Street. That wasn't a year ago. That had practically no valuation. Now it's got a much larger valuation than it had before, and therefore is generating property tax. In fact, it's by the end of this year, I suppose, or next year, it's going to be fully developed, and it's going to have even more. So it's not just so static, and I'm interested in that sort of level of granularity as well.
Yep.
Because it makes a big difference to just assuming a 3%.
Yep. And so we've done some
valuation.
calculation of like, can we build ourselves out of a general fund deficit? So we will have information like that in the packet as well. But Bryn's working on all of that, both revenue and expenditures, as well as revenue opportunities that council could choose to pursue.
And that's so that's in the forecasting. I see there's revenue generation and additional cost cutting.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you talking about the process because when strategic planning was brought up, I believe that we need to see the money, know where the money's coming from, how much money we have before we can make a strategic plan. So I appreciate that. And I was looking at what Councillor Kaplan was talking about, and getting the information in a timely fashion. Just looking at the holidays are here, Thanksgiving is here. Do you know when we will get the packet for our retreat?
Pending no major changes to this agenda, our goal is to have it to you by Monday or Tuesday of next week.
Thank you.
Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. Can we do that every meeting? Not that much in advance?
If you ask for the information 6 months in advance, sure.
Okay, all right, great. No, I want to just quickly comment, oh gosh, wouldn't that be great if we could just build our way out of a deficit? But that's not real. Two quick things. With the forecasting, will it be at least a minimum of 3 years? At least 3 years.
So we'll have a 2 and a 5-year projection.
That is amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then the second one is about location. And this one is a very selfish reason for me. We meet in this room committees all the time, and it's a bit claustrophobic for me. Maybe I just like my space. And seeing all of us that are going to be there, again, claustrophobic, and I kind of like the space anyways. But the other thing is, if the public does come, it gets really squeezed. And I was wondering, could we just do it in here?
Yeah, either way. So we originally had it scheduled in here, and then there was a request to not have it in here. So I literally don't care, just pick a space.
Okay, I would put forward to the group, I would really love to just have it in here.
Okay, I will ensure that court is not utilizing it for court purposes, and then we will change the location.
So let's ask
You're
a question.
in
Let's ask
agreement.
around, because I'm not sure that is a sense of the full council. In the past, we have had retreats in a place where we could actually see all of each other more than the half moon that we have here. And so before we give any direction to staff, I would like to find out from each counselor whether you would prefer to be here or at this point, we have the Siskiyou room, but there could also be another place to put it, correct? That would have more room for public to show up.
At this point, we only have city facilities that we could use, so it's this room or the Siskiyou room.
Unless we use a different room, could we potentially ask the university if they have a space for us, or?
We could use the Grove Conference Room potentially, or we can look to rent a space from SOU. But they will charge us, and it's kind of a little late for that.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Bloom.
What about the community center? We can rent some tables and chairs.
So my goal is not to spend a lot of money on this retreat, since we're talking about city finances. So if you could
Well,
just
we spent
get
10,000
board,
on tables
that
and
would be great.
chairs. What's the little rental fee?
They're not here.
So please, let's go around and let us know if you would like the retreat to be held in here or in the current plan, I guess, which is the Siskiyou room. Although there is some potential to have it somewhere else, but maybe a kind of more of a circular space. Is that correct? Maybe Carpenter Hall?
I don't have to answer to any of this because we have not looked
Asked
to lease
anyone.
a space.
Okay, so let us know what your preference is. Councillor Sherrill.
Mayor, is it true that this building holds considerably more people than the Siskiyou room?
Yes.
Okay, are we expecting to have a space issue?
No. Well, the last time we had a retreat, I think we had 3 people come to it.
I'm okay with it here, but I don't have a strong opinion.
I think subject to Sabrina's investigation of things, I would prefer here, just rather have and not need than need and not have relative to space.
So I didn't quite understand that.
I would, my first choice would be this room as opposed to the Siskiyou room.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, and I mean, the TV setups, I mean, I think it just feels right. I mean, this is a study session. We're going to be doing a deep dive. I'm comfortable here. It's my safe space, okay?
Councillor Kaplan?
I'm ambivalent. I could do it either place. I do take Councillor Bloom's point that it's actually a little easier to see presentations here than it is in the Siskiyou room where there's only one screen.
Councillor Duquesne?
I'm good with here. Second choice would definitely be community center.
Councillor Hanson?
Well, you had me at forecasting, so I'll show up wherever that's presented. Here is fine. Thank you.
All right, you have your answer. Anything else on the retreat agenda? Okay, we move on now to the city manager's report.
There is an app coming your way for story time. So our calendar app is going to be live. You're going to be able to get it download it onto your phone. And so if you recall, sorry, I'm looking for that information. You funded this through TLT funds. And so now you have a calendar app. So we'll push out information on how to download it. And so you can get to events. So that is very exciting. So that is my big announcement for tonight, unless you would like to go over the look ahead.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please. Sure.
Just the point,
Councilor Dale.
I just wanted to ask, just for you, in the packet, it does say that there does need to be a motion to approve the city council retreat agenda, so I guess I would ask you and.
Yes, we weren't just giving feedback.
Yeah.
Yes, the floor is open for a motion regarding the retreat agenda. Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the city council retreat agenda as posted in the packet.
There a second? Councilor Kaplan? Councilor Hanson?
Yeah, I do appreciate all the intention that's gone into this and all the staff work that's going into it. Yeah, I really look forward to it.
Councilor Kaplan?
No, that's fine.
Any other discussion? Okay. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloomingdale.
Bloom. Motion pass.
Okay, back to my app. Storytown app. You can download it now. So it's called Storytown Ashland. So it's already available. So Councilmember Kaplan's on it, so he can tell us
Everybody go.
what's going on with that. In terms of the look ahead, so as discussed, we have your retreat on December 1st. That does start at 1 p.m. and pending making sure nothing's happening in court, we'll be in here. And then December 15th, we will have the audit presentation as well as our work plan presentations and celebration for our advisory committees. So that's exciting. December 2nd, Alyssa will be back again with her liquor license ordinance. So she's excited, you can tell. And then the second reading of Ordinance 3272, annexation for Casita 1 and 2 will be back. And then we will have a discussion about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund money and the Clay Street property, as well as the request to begin the surplus property for Imperatrice. And then we will look to have a resolution to extend our pilot program for portable signs, so sandwich board signs in the downtown commercial areas. So exciting. Okay, that's the look ahead.
All right, any other business from council members or reports from council liaisons? Okay, if that's the case, there's...
Quick one, if you just to thank
Councilor
you.
Dale?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Mayor. It just occurs to me, and I defer to Councilor Kaplan too. I picked the one meeting for CPAC to be on Zoom when they brought food in. Right. So I just wanted to say thank you to Brian Soul and the team and Chad to take care of them tonight. So I watched them eat and had good discussion. But just wanted to thank you. Thanks to that committee for doing that. So.
Councilor Duquesne?
Thank you. I had one quick announcement. The Social Equity and Racial Justice Committee, we are working together in community to celebrate the life of Aiden Ellison. 5 years ago on November 23rd, his life was taken, and there will be a visual at 2 o'clock on Mountain Street at the high school in front of the mural to celebrate a young man's life that was taken before it even really started. So it's a community thing. Please come.
Can you say the date and time again, Councilor Duquesne?
November 23rd at 2 o'clock in front of the mural on Mountain Street at Ashland High School.
Thank you. There are no further updates. The floor is open for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting is adjourned.